Forget about Black Lives Matter. Democrats have a new cause. Bankers' lives matter. The big story this week was, of course, Silicon Valley Bank and the way the Biden administration rushed to give this august financial institution a bailout that no one was allowed to call a bailout. Now, I've been saying for years that wokeness and free money were going to be the ruin of us all. And you know what? I'm afraid I'm now a little closer to being proven right. This week, the headlines were dominated by the news that the West Coast financial institution had fallen due to a combination of bad management, bad choices, and the fact that the long-term U.S. Treasury bonds the bank had loaded up on kept dropping in value with each interest rate rise. I know, right? Who knew that essentially betting on the financial performance of the Biden administration would have been a bad idea? Well, certainly not the board of Silicon Valley Bank, about which we have learned much, including that they were mostly a bunch of big Democrat donors, and only one of them had any experience in actual banking. So guess what happened? Well, they went on and did pretty much what you would have expected them to do, which was, instead of running a profitable bank, they ran a lot of ESG nonsense. From their 2022 annual report, here are just some of their cross-function working groups. The bank had a sustainable finance group to develop strategy and monitor progress against the bank's climate commitment. They had an investments group to review updates from businesses on sustainability and investing-related initiatives and client engagement. Oh, how lovely. They had a climate risk group, naturally, to recommend, monitor, and support implementation of climate risks. And they also had an operational climate group to monitor implementation of operational greenhouse gas reduction initiatives. Naturally, they had a DEI governance group to oversee and manage their DEI disclosures. And they had a green team to focus on internal sustainability interests and activities. And on and on and on. Oh, and naturally, they did their part for the revolution, too. According to this article, the Silicon Valley Bank gave $73 million to Black Lives Matter and other social justice causes. Here's what James Morrow, House Oversight Committee Chair, had to say.
And then we see now coming out that they were one of the most woke banks in their quest for the ESG type policy and investing. This could be a trend, and there are consequences for bad Democrat policy. And I think we need to keep an eye on all the banking sector right now.
Well, yeah, you got it right there. One of the most woke banks ever, almost as woke as another bank that went belly up this week, Signature Bank, which held pronoun seminars complete with watch parties for its staff when they weren't, too busy looking after its customers' money.
The most common pronouns that folks are familiar with are she and he, becoming much more common. And I don't know if there's anyone in the Signature Bank world, but probably you have clients that use they, them as pronouns.
And all those she, he's, theys, and z's also spent their time making cringy music videos. Have a look at this. Oh, sorry, I just got a little too into the music there. Gosh, that really felt like something out of The Office. But no, that was real life, a real bank. And this is a trend. And so is it any surprise that when suddenly at SVB and Signature, the accounts didn't add up anymore, the Biden administration came to the rescue of these Democrat-run banks, covering the accounts of customers who had tens and sometimes hundreds of millions of dollars on deposit, despite the federal deposit guarantee being only up to $250,000? Now, a lot of technical stuff happened behind the scenes to make this happen, but essentially the bank had allowed itself to become really, really exposed to interest rates, both because of the asset portfolio they held and the fact they had a client base of tech startups whose constant need for finance capital made them particularly sensitive to interest rates. Here's what Vivek Ramaswamy, the outsider Republican presidential candidate, wrote in the Wall Street Journal. He said, SVB intentionally decided not to hedge its interest rate risk. Either SVB was incompetent, or this is a case of moral hazard, taking excessive risk and expecting political favors and bailouts. Goes on, he says, it turns out SVB's real hedge was to curry favor with the Biden administration. And indeed, moral hazard is what we are talking about. Moral hazard being where the government takes an action that encourages people to do dumb things, like put all their money in a bank that's both incredibly exposed to interest rates and whose staff is spending all its time going to diversity morning teas. Now, Joe Biden and his officials have been quick to say that this isn't a bailout. He's been saying it over and over again. And he also had this to say about all of this.
Today, thanks to the quick action of my administration over the past few days, Americans can have confidence that the banking system is safe. Your deposits will be there when you need them. Small businesses across the country, the deposit accounts at these banks can breathe easier knowing they'll be able to pay their workers and pay their bills.
The money will be there when you need it because, hey, if you're with a woke bank, they'll just magic up some cash to make you whole. And the fact that Joe Biden gave that speech early in the morning, well, apparently that was important in and of itself, as former White House spokeswoman Jen Psaki noted.
Now, it's important to note, President Biden does nothing at 9 a.m. He is a night owl. So the fact that he is doing this at 9 a.m. anyway speaks to how vital the White House recognizes it is for him to have his voice out there, conveying that to the American public.
A night owl. Oh, that explains it. Yeah, look, Jen, sorry, I'm not sure that little participation trophy you're handing out there is quite as shiny as you think it is. The fact is, eventually, one way or another, taxpayers are going to pay. And the move to essentially eliminate deposit insurance caps is not only a step to moral hazard, but also, let's be frank about it, also the road to nationalization of the U.S. banking system. Because once you eliminate a bank's risk, you can demand they do what you want as a premium for bailing them out. Of course, if you ask me, instead of bailing them out, I always thought there was another solution.
Shayna, they bought their tickets. They knew what they were getting into. I say, let them crash.